One person who has expressed, I think in no uncertain terms, concerns about some of those aspects of the opening of Parliament yesterday is the leader of the ACT Party and the Minister of Regulations, member of the Coalition Cabinet, David Seymour, who joins us by video link now. David, thank you for your time this morning.
No worries, Sean. Good morning.
It was a different opening of Parliament. And you do seem to have expressed concern about it. What are the concerns you have?
Oh, look, I just have the basic concern that, Parliament's an institution that's grown up over hundreds of years. It has its traditions. It functions pretty well, despite the fact we don't always like the policies that come out of it. That if everybody takes an extra minute to do their haka or their waiata, their song or whatever their performance is, the whole thing would have been there for an extra hour or two. And I just think, we've got 120 people to get through. Everyone's got to sign up. I noticed that the Te Pāti Māori members, having said that they wouldn't swear allegiance to the King, as you noted, actually did. And the cynic in me thinks that maybe that's because they realise if you don't swear the oath, then you're not technically an MP, and if you're not technically an MP, you don't get the salary. So they were very happy to do that, but they also went on and took up a whole lot of people's time. Also, just make the point about the protest. It was a bit less than we were sort of led to believe by the press. But, ultimately protests have to have a coherent message. And if they want to win people over to their point of view, then they should try and be as little disruption as possible to people going about their lives. Now, the message of this protest, as far as I could see, was a grab bag of objections that aren't really founded in anything that the government's actually doing, and yet they sought to create as much disruption as possible to people trying to go about their lives. And I thought it was summed up by some guys working on some scaffolding on one of Parliament's statues, and I said, look, what do you guys think of all that? And they said, oh, we don't care, we're just too busy trying to work here. And I suspect that that's how most people felt about it.
That's how you feel about it. I was interested in the way that that protest was covered in the run-up to it, and it was covered when it was happening. It almost got more dedicated news coverage on our TV channels than the opening of Parliament itself. And the comments that came from that protest were then thrown, for example, at the new Māori Affairs Minister, Tama Potaka, and I heard journalists screeching at him, is this the most racist government ever? There seems to be a narrative being built by the mainstream media which is uber critical on almost any front of the new government.
Well, it's not only that, it's a destruction of language. So, words have to mean something. Racism means that you treat a person differently based on their membership of an ethnic group. Now, this government has zero intention of doing that. In fact, the initiatives that a lot of these people are opposed to are initiatives designed to remove discrimination on the basis of race and treat all people the same regardless of which ethnic group they're a member of. Yet somehow we get an accusation that that is racism. And I really worry that we've got people who either inadvertently or deliberately are trying to destroy the basis of having a civil conversation, which is just basic agreement about what basic words mean.
Yeah, well, I note, the staff-owned or staff-operated post, page 20 this morning, OK, monolingual boomer, you might have had your final moment in the sun. And as I said, this narrative of racism around language, or a rebalancing of what has been a state-imposed revolution in language, seems to be the basis for these racism accusations. I also want to ask you about the symbols used to promote that protest yesterday. Two admittedly ancient or oldie-worldy firearms crossed with the Tino Rangatira flag coming out of them and the New Zealand flag coming out of the other. That is quite violent symbolism to be using for a protest.
Well, I think it's another feature of this whole debate that unfortunately Te Pāti Māori are held to a lower standard by themselves, by the press, and by, I think, a lot of their supporters. I think it goes without saying that if any other political party advertised a rally and a protest movement with firearms in the symbolism, you would see certain people in the press and elsewhere go absolutely berserk. And yet this is passed somehow uncriticised by most of the press. Now, I personally don't mind so much. It's an expression of a historic artefact. But, again, one of the challenges we face is that there seems to be a different standard to which Te Pāti Māori are held. And I suspect that if other MPs got up and started doing cultural performances on the floor of the House in between signing in and, taking their seat again, people say, oh, you're wasting everyone's time, it's disrespectful, it's narcissistic, and yet, somehow we hold Te Pāti Māori to a lower standard, and that's another feature of this debate.